Proverbs, everybody. Proverbs. I'm going to read chapter 1. This seems timely, especially for today. Very timely. I'm going to start in chapter 1. The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel. Now, he's king of Israel. The king, David. We know what David struggled with, but what many people don't know is what David spoke is prophecy of Christ. David often did not speak of himself, but he was speaking of Christ. How many people don't know that? When David prayed to the Lord, right, he was praying in a prophetic tongue, meaning many of his words match up to the very heart of Christ. Did you guys know that? So it was almost like David was prompted to pray, but when his heart poured out, he poured out the words of Christ. It's an amazing thing. So these are the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, the king. And again, in reference to David, David had a very prophetic tongue, but King David was also, we know he was a man, he was a scoundrel. Solomon was very worried about the kingdom when he was young, and there's a story behind this, but the day Solomon, after all the treachery that had taken place, and you have these other characters waiting in the shadows, wanting to usurp the kingdom, Solomon one day prayed. And as he thought about God's promise, he was focused on God's promise to Israel. And he basically said, Lord, they need a real king. They need a real king. And so he requested of the Lord that he would be given what is necessary to step not only in his father's shoes, but to be an acceptable king to God's people. He really had that on his heart because he did that, because he did not ask for riches or any of these things, right? Because why is that so important, by the way? Why is it so important that Solomon did not ask for riches? Anybody know why that's so important? I'll tell you. When you're asking for riches, if Solomon would have said, Lord, just give me the finances necessary to run your kingdom, that means Solomon had his own plan already. And he wanted God to finance his plan. That's much like what people do today. They say, Lord, give me the tools necessary to make this plan work. Well, no, that's no good, because that's still us trying to establish our way of doing things. That's not what Solomon did. What Solomon did was Solomon said, these are your people. And I need you to give me what I need to do for your people. In other words, he did not tell the Lord, I'm going to go forward with my plan. That's not what he said. That's why he didn't ask for riches. He had no plan, but he realized the importance of the people. And because he did not ask for riches, when you don't ask for riches, that means you don't have a plan of finance. That means you're open to the guidance of the Most High. And the Most High uses Solomon as an example for all of us, that's a good way to ask him for something, a very genuine way. Because again, if we ask the Lord for the resources, then we already have a plan. It's our plan. It's the Lord backing our plan. He's not a banker, right? But King Solomon wanted the wisdom necessary to run that kingdom. He wanted the understanding necessary to run that kingdom for the Lord in the Lord's way. He didn't have a plan. He didn't want God to back his plan. He said, oh no, these are your people. So put in me whatever's necessary for them. That was beautiful. That was a beautiful request. And as for doing that, the Lord set him up to be the wisest man that ever was or ever would be. And he gave him bountiful riches. Why? Because he was not going to implement his own plan, but he would wait upon the Lord for the Lord's instruction. He was an open vessel for the Lord's usage. If we could follow that one example, my goodness, everything in our lives would change. Everything. And I do that. I try my best. I don't try. I do it because either you do it or you don't, right? So I know I'm known for, when it comes to the Lord, for a lack of planning. In the world, I planned everything. But these organizations like this is not the world. This is the Lord's heart, the Lord's word. It's holy. And when you're handling something like, there's no way in the world my ideas can go into it. I reject it. In fact, I bump heads with a lot of people in that regard because they have plans and I do not. I'll always say, no, let's wait upon the Lord. Let the Lord handle this. Well, the Lord wants us to do something. Well, we will. As soon as he instructs us, we'll do it. And then it is done in such a way, it is really beyond normalcy. It's well beyond normalcy because nothing is really scoped out, and planned, and projected, and all these things that people normally do. But that we follow instruction, and for some reason, it aligns itself perfectly. It does. You guys know there's no way. There's no way we should operate the way we do. But we do. How in the world can all of what's happening be happening in the first place? And by the way, you only see about 2% of it. If you're on the internet, you see about 2% of it. 2% of what's actually happening is what you see. The output is what's so enormous. The hands-on output is a miracle. It is a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly miracle. It really is. So I'm kind of blown away every single day because of that, because the Lord coordinates in such a way. For the sake of his children. It's not because of me. It's for the sake of his children. It's not because of how good anybody is behind the scenes. It's for the sake of the children. It's because the Lord he actually has a voice here. Now that's strange. And how many places do you know where the Lord has a voice? Because all of what most people hear are man's plans. And as we read this, you're going to see the reflection of that, how it looks, and the advisements, good advisements. So let's get started, shall we? To know wisdom and instruction, to receive the words of understanding, to receive instruction of wisdom, justice and judgment and equity, to give subtlety to the simple, and to the young man knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear and will increase learning, and a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsel, to understand a proverb and the interpretation, the words of the wise and their dark sayings. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. We had a conversation one time about knowledge, people seeking knowledge and utilizing knowledge. Knowledge, you're going to learn quickly in Proverbs. Knowledge without wisdom, godly wisdom, is foolishness. All knowledge obtained is foolishness if you have no wisdom, nor understanding, nor can gain the interpretation of it. See, the interpretation of God's word is given by the Spirit, not by divination. And as you can see in this first half, Solomon's saying to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive instruction of wisdom, justice, and judgment, and equity, to give subtlety to the simple. That is, when we're working with a person who has a very simplified life, maybe they don't know all the catches of life, to be able to work with those people and to have the patience with those people declares what type of person you are. If you have no time for them, Solomon calls that type person on the verge of a great evil. When you take no time, right, with the simple. Subtleties, in fact, are what the simple operate by, subtleties. I would consider myself one of these simple ones. To the young man, knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear and will increase learning. A man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsel. To understand a proverb and the interpretation, the words of the wise and their dark sayings. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Now it says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. What does that mean? Well, when you fear or respect the Lord or have the Lord first in all of your thoughts, he's really first in everything that you do, and everything that you do is declared unto the Lord. That is the beginning of knowledge. That's when you begin to really learn. Not just any knowledge, but God's knowledge that he departs to us. It says, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. They do. They hate authority. Most people in this category have this saying. You know what they'll say? No one can tell me what to do. That is a saying of a fool, according to Proverbs and according to truth. That really is a saying of a fool. And sometimes, at times past, we had a foolish heart just like that. We hated authority. We did. I'm very thankful the Lord had me go through what he sent me through in my life, because I can easily submit myself to authorities. That means I can follow instruction. I can easily place myself below somebody else. In so doing, the Lord shows me ways of servitude that a person wouldn't otherwise learn. And if you can't serve anybody else, then what good are you? Because the greatest of the prophets were the best servants, and the worst servants were the evil people in the Word of God. Everybody who had demands was a tyrant, and all those who knew how to serve people, they were truly prophets, men and women of the living God. My son, hear instruction of my father, and forsake not the law of thy mother, for they shall be an ornament of grace unto thy head, and chains about thy neck. And what that means is, if you hear the instruction, he says, my son, hear the instruction of your father, and forsake not the law of your mother. You know how mothers have this built-in law system in them. Do you guys know this? You're going to find all the words of these proverbs relevant to life. Women have the do's and don'ts list. They really do. They can't help themselves. It's built into them. They have a this isn't supposed to be, and that's not supposed to be, and this is supposed to be list. And all of those lists match up. Now, they don't follow them all the time, but they still have them. And immediately, he's being told not to forsake this. And for a godly woman, it is important. That's why people talk about you hear people talk about their grandmothers. Very seldom do you hear people talk about their grandfathers. Figure that one out. It's because your grandmother was the person who did what? She had the do's and don'ts list. That's guidance in life. The law of a mother is the same all throughout all generations. Fathers do give instruction. They give instruction because they have learned a great deal. And they attempt to instruct so that a person can survive, so they can thrive. Not just thrive in life. That's foolish. To gain everything in the world and to lose your soul is what happens when you just thrive in life. But no, to thrive by way of the Spirit. That means your life will be whole. It won't be fractured. Most of us sit around in pieces. We actually do, because we have elements of the truth. But to put that truth into operation is to be able to operate by understanding and the interpretation of wisdom, and to go forward in your life and to really live in a joyful peace, but be very disciplined at the same time. If we hear the instruction of the Father, he says, and forsake not the law of the mother, they shall be an ornament of grace unto your head, an ornament of grace. Now, we all know the head is where your brain is, all your thoughts and everything, all the important things of you are right there in your head. That's where things are conceived. Even those things you conceive of, if you have an equal balance of instruction, and you did not forsake the law of the mother, that that ornament of grace around your head means that your plans will not just be any plans. Your endeavors will not just be any endeavors, but fruitful plans and fruitful endeavors. So that means the nature of what you want to do in life changes by the instruction in that do's and don'ts list that you adhere to in life, that you accept in life. My son, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. If they say, come with us, let us lay wait for blood. Let us drink privately for the innocent without cause. Let us swallow them up alive as the grave, and whole as those that go down to the pit. If they do this, it says, and we shall find all precious substance, and we shall fill our houses with spoil. Cast in thy lot among us. Let us all have one purse. My son, walk not in the way of them. Now, what is he saying? Don't walk in the way of these people. Listen to what he's saying. You're going to find this interesting. It's very relevant to today. If they shall say, come with us, let us lay wait for blood. Let us lurk privately for the innocent without cause, for no reason. That, you know what that is? Let's equate that to today. Hey, everybody, let's start up a business. And what we'll do in this business is we'll really start making a product that everybody needs. And because they need it so badly, let's go ahead and throw a price on there. And people will break their necks to pay this price. We're just trying to get the money out of it. We don't care if it works for them or not. Let's go ahead and make this thing, right? They'll keep paying into it because they think they need it. And we'll Proverbs 1:13, we shall find all precious substance. We shall fill our houses with spoil. Let's get rich. Is what they're saying. Let's get rich. That is a modern day. This modern day junk that goes on today. How many useless products do you have in your home? How many that you thought they advertise, they market, they tell you that you need them. And when they tell you that you need them, you say, yeah, I do need that, so I can do this. And then you envision yourself as doing something much better, being more precise, getting ahead in life, because all the imagery is very important also. They show people who are nice and clean, have the new outfits, are happy, they're always smiling, this, that, and the other, with a broom. Or a vacuum that costs $600, right? Like that's really going to really make you happy. So you go and break your neck, and you're paying for a $600 vacuum, or a 100-inch television, or $6,000 computer, and you really thought it was going to advance your life. So you get that thing home, and because you're still believing in the marketing, you're going to keep it for a year, 2 years. You're not going to give it up because you're going to say, no, I paid a lot for this. I invested a lot in this. I'm not going to throw it away. But why? It's a piece. It's not doing you any good. It did not advance your life or do any of those things. You know that's what marketing is designed for? Marketing is this saying, come, let us lay wait for blood. Let us lurk privately for the innocent without cause. Let us swallow them up alive as the grave, and whole as those that go down to the pit. We shall find all precious substance. We're going to get rich off of this. We shall fill our houses with spoil. He's telling us, don't cast your lot among these folks, right? Don't walk with these people, because they'll say, cast in thy lot among us. Come join us. Let us all get rich from this idea. Can't you see that? That's Proverbs 1:14. Cast in thy lot among us. Let us all have one purse. Let us all benefit from this. Come on, we can all do it together and we'll be rich. It's all over the place. You can't avoid it. It's everywhere. Everywhere. People just scheming and thinking up things. Well, if we do this, we can help them out, and plus we get rich in the meanwhile. They're not thinking about the person. Because I'll tell you something. If you start making an item or a product or something for a person, the last thing you're going to do is think about getting rich. It is the world that says get rich from it. If you do it the Lord's way, you know what will happen. Somebody's going to receive your product that actually helps, and without charging them anything, they're going to give right back to you. I'm just telling you what I know. In fact, they'll give more to you than you could ever charge them. If it really helps them, they won't forget you. But that's not what the world's based on, is it? The world's based on this competitive junk. It does not enhance the lives of those who receive this stuff, but it causes people to work day and night to buy something that does not enhance their lives. They have been tricked into thinking it's going to enhance their lives, it's going to work for them. They don't care about the ones it does not work for. They just care about getting rich. That's the way they make it. That's the dream, isn't it? So he says, my son, walk not thou in the way of them. Refrain thy foot from their path. Now, when it says refrain thy foot from their path, that means it's very, very attractive. If you're getting advice in the book of Proverbs and it says refrain thy foot from their path, it also is a declaration that you know their path and you have to stop yourself from joining in with it. Because if you're not careful, you will. It also means it's all around you. See, if it says refrain thy foot from their path, that means you're very close to it. You can be sucked into it. All you need is one moment of desperation. Let's continue to read. For their feet run to evil and make haste to shed blood. They don't care who they damage in the process. Surely in vain the net is spread in the sight of any bird. And they lay wait for their own blood. They lurk privately for their own lives. So are the ways of everyone that is greedy of gain, which taketh away the life of the owners thereof. Does this talk against the ideology of getting rich? No, it doesn't. See, to have wealth is not the problem. That's not the problem. The wealth is not the problem. The problem is what you do to gain the wealth. That's the problem. What you have done to get what you have is the problem. Do you all see that? Let's continue. Wisdom crieth without or outside. She uttereth her voice in the streets. She crieth in the chief place of the concourse, in the openings of the gate. In the city she uttereth her words, saying, how long, ye simple ones, will ye love simplicity? And the scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. That's a question mark after that. And fools hate knowledge. Turn you at my reproof. Behold, I will pour out my spirit unto you. I will make known my words unto you. This is wisdom speaking, crying out. Wisdom crying out. What is it crying out? What is wisdom crying out? This is very important to know. So first of all of you who are there saying, well, I'm not smart enough to understand this stuff. Yes, you are. But take the word smart enough off. Your Lord has seen fit to make you worthy to receive his knowledge if you would receive it. Take that worthy stuff off. This is something God has declared, something that's loosed in the earth right now. It will never go to the slothful or the lazy, but to those who will embrace it. And doesn't mean you're going to have perfect speech. It doesn't mean that your academic scores are going to go off the scale. That's not what it means. I've seen people who can't add 2 plus 2. But they do and know things that would make the greatest scientists slobber. How about that one? They really do. Wisdom crieth out. She uttereth her voice in the streets. It's always there. It's always a potential for us to learn. Now, what that means is wisdom crying out. It's not an actual person crying out. Wisdom crying out means it can be found everywhere. It is for those who receive it. It is everywhere. Every situation, every circumstance, every interaction, everything is based on wisdom. Everything is. Everything you encounter, everything, can be a potential gain in wisdom for you if you would receive it. It is everywhere. Through every fall of your life, every mistake of your life, wisdom can be gained. But it's up to you to receive it. You have lived a few years by now, have gone through a few things by now. But did you accept the wisdom of all of what you went through? Or did you reject the entire thing? Did you mark it as a mistake? Did you mark it as something that shouldn't happen? That's why people that go through life saying, well, this shouldn't have happened and this shouldn't have happened, they are rejecting great wisdom. Great wisdom. The worst problems in your life yield the greatest wisdom. But will you receive it or will you reject it? So wisdom does cry out. It cries outside. She uttereth her voice in the streets. It's everywhere. She crieth in the chief place of the concourse. These are the best places of the world. In the openings of the gates. In the city she uttereth her words, saying, how long, you simple ones, will you love simplicity? How long are you going to be complacent, just living your lives by the same unyielding standard of saying it shouldn't have happened, rejecting wisdom? It was a mistake. This was a trauma. I don't need to remember that. Yes, you do. How long will you love simplicity, and the scorners delight in their scorning? Now that's funny. How long will the scorners delight in their scorning? You know what that means? They're always telling you what you did wrong. They do not have the wisdom to instruct you on what to do right. Have you noticed that about scorners? People who point out the faults of others. Oh, look how they made this mistake and this and they just totally messed that up. Well, that's foolishness. Don't scorn. Give instruction to do it right. If all Christians would adopt that one thing, to stop scorning, but to begin instructing, this whole world would change within hours. Do you know why? Criticism is highly misunderstood by most. What do you guys think criticism is? Criticism is not merely to point out the flaws of another. That's not criticism. That's not what that is. Criticism is a teaching tool, and it really is. If you go back to its base definition, you're going to find out something. Those who actually adopted the word and framed it, you're going to find out something. To criticize somebody is an act of pointing things out that they could do better. It's not putting somebody down. That's not criticism. Criticism is not putting somebody down. Criticizing is pointing out what they can do better. To criticize is to help. But it became offensive back in the medieval days. And it changed from there to the point now where hardly anybody knows what the true purpose of that word was. Because in the medieval ages, you dare criticize me? See, it became something bad. Criticism was in fact to point out where a person could excel in what they were doing. It was a way of improving another. But in this day and age, the scorners delight in their scorning. They get happy because they have the best comments against somebody. You don't believe me? Look at some of these social media places that they brag about on television. They say something that's appealing, that rhymes, something that puts somebody else down. The world begins to adopt it. They go tell it to somebody else, and before you know it, everybody is using these clever phrases. They delight in folly, in foolishness, in just senseless things. That's a true evil, by the way, is foolishness. And it says, and fools hate knowledge. Before I criticize anybody, I will never criticize somebody in any area that I am not proficient in. I have to be proficient in an area. For me to criticize somebody is a task. That's why I don't criticize people. You don't hear me, what they should have done, you don't hear me saying that, do you? But if I go through something, I've become proficient at something, then my criticism is actually instruction. Kids know it. Because if I have to say I have to talk to a child, their head goes down. Oh, no. It's one of those teaching moments, isn't it? He's going to talk for 2 hours. That's right. They're going to learn all about what they did. It's a teaching moment. That's their punishment, too. Isn't that funny? But I don't scorn, I instruct. Correcting a child, telling them what they do wrong all the time. Why do you think some of our lives have been damaged by parents who only pointed out what you messed up? They did not finish it. You don't point out where a child messed up and then leave it there. Well, you broke that, and that's it. You're in trouble. No. I remember one time a child broke a very expensive glass, and they started crying. When they started crying immediately, my heart dropped. You know why it dropped? Because I perceived that their parents would actually yell at them for breaking some tangible object. I told the child, I said, look at me. That's just a glass. This stuff can always be replaced. You can't be replaced. Don't cry. Don't cry. Just be careful next time. Now, how easy is that? Rather than getting angry at the child because they broke your expensive glass, not teaching the child anything. Everything is a teachable moment. But again, that's what Proverbs is about. To seize that opportunity for yourselves, to excel in your wisdom. Because I tell you, wisdom is crying out all the time. But who would receive it? Turn you, this is Proverbs 1:23, turn you at my reproof. Behold, I will pour out my spirit unto you. I will make known my words unto you. You hear that? Do you hear that? Turn you at my reproof. This is the key. In other words, don't continue to stride on in your life after you feel. Have you ever done something? You ever work on something you really messed it up bad, right? You just totally tore it up. You messed it up. You thought you could handle it, and you found out you could not handle it. And when you found out you couldn't handle it, or you couldn't do it, right, that you weren't proficient at it, you know what you did? You got depressed. You had the Charlie Brown syndrome, and you walked forward. You just skipped it. You didn't apply anything to it. If you turn at the reproof of something, when you mess up and you feel that way internally, oh, I just messed that up. That's when you turn your whole attention to it. And you begin to evaluate yourselves. That becomes a very departing moment. That can depart the most wisdom to you. These situations that happen that get you down a lot, where you feel like you have absolutely failed, that's an opportunity for a lot of wisdom. If you would not turn away from it, but turn toward it. Look into it and say, wait a minute, let me go back over this again. And let me continue to go back over this. And let me not skip over this, but let me go back to it so that nothing is incomplete with me. And then you give it your best and you find out your own limitations. See, I found out one thing early in life. I can't do everything. I don't know everything. And I can't learn everything. So when I mess up things in life, what I have a habit of doing is going back to it. Not because I'm not going to be defeated. Because I evaluate me and I see what I'm capable of and what I'm not capable of. It's just like if you had a person who's a gymnast to your left and you're to the right, and this gymnast bends over backwards and they touch the back of their heels somehow. Well, you find out quickly you can't do it. As soon as you reach back and fall into the floor, you say, what happened here? Well, I'm not that flexible. Well, what does it take? It takes years of practice of stretching and calisthenics and exercise and blah, blah, blah. I just don't have that yet. So incapable of doing that yet. It can be obtained, but I would have to invest a lot of time into it. Then you understand the situation. You understand why you failed. It is not some negative moment in your life, but it has become a departing moment of wisdom. You become wiser. So the next time somebody says, hey, can you bend backwards and touch your heels? Not yet. That would take me years of practice. Oh, why would you say that? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Let me show you how. Then you can give that wisdom to somebody else. Do you see how that works? But if we simply fail at something and walk off, that's ignoring, that's not giving heed to the reproof that comes by way of so many situations in our lives. Because if we turn to it, it says, behold, I will pour out my spirit unto you. Now listen, this is a principle. If you turn to it, something happens, something you didn't expect happens. The word behold is used. Pay attention. Look, look, look. I will pour out my spirit unto you. Who will? Wisdom will. We all know what wisdom is. He'll pour out his spirit unto you. Who's going to do this? The Lord is going to give you an extra degree of understanding. Why? Because you stood. You stood there and you faced it. That's uprightness. Not to curse it and to walk away. Not to curse the people who bought the situation. I know some engineers that way. And I know some people who work on things and they design things. And if they're designing something, they'll get a bad part, right? Oh, they'll curse the part. The designers of the part and the originators of the part all the way back in their ancestry. They'll do it. But that's not the way. You evaluate it. You learn from it. You become more proficient at it. You have to find out what happened. See, some people get bored in life and I have nothing to do. It's because you're ignoring the opportunities of wisdom being departed to you. Right now, if you had no task before you, your life could be full of wisdom. You know why? You've been through so much, but you've turned back to evaluate so little. Look at all of what you can turn back to understand it. Look at all of, instead of thinking about these moments as traumas and tragic moments, look back into them. See what they're about. Learn of them. And then walk forward being wiser than you were before you turned. Because when you turn to face anything, a principle is upon you. God will depart understanding to you. God doesn't just give a person all the time understanding when they ignore things, because that's not responsible. A responsible person, a good steward, one that takes care of their own flock, will turn back to that situation they just failed and seek to know why they failed. They'll identify. They will never blame, but they identify. They know the situation. They learn from it. Because those who turn away from it normally face it again and again and again, or they find themselves running from it the rest of their lives. Oh, that situation looks like that other one. Let me run this way. And they become runners. They run away from everything. The armor of God does not work on your backside. The armor of God is meant for those who would face everything, not for those who would run from everything. It says, behold, I will pour out my spirit unto you. I will make known my words unto you. That's understanding. Because I have called and you refused. I stretched out my hand and no man regarded. But ye said it not all my counsel. I would none of my reproof. I also will laugh at your calamity. You see that? That means, and it happens this way all the time. Did you guys see that? So if you don't turn back to it, here's what happens. Because I have called, that was a calling of wisdom. It says, and you refused. I have stretched out my hand, and no man regarded it. They didn't look at it. They say, hey, that's wisdom that I could obtain here. They didn't regard it. But they have set it not all my counsel. So those moments where you could be wise, that you could have turned back to, you set them as nothing. You're trying to make them nothing. You're forgetting them. You're pushing them out of your life like they didn't even take place. It says, and would none of my reproof, you wouldn't turn back to see anything. It says, I will also laugh at your calamity. Because you have done this, I will also laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear cometh. That's the next step, because normally when you don't do that, and go forward wiser, when you start running away from everything, and I tell you, don't run away from anything but face all things. I teach my daughter that all the time. Boy, she learns quick. Face everything. And for a daughter to face everything, that's a pretty bold statement. When you face everything, you're not going to contemplate it, sit there and stew over it, have a bad attitude, be shifty and shaky and all these things. But you face it, you find out what is what. And then once you find out, you have peace of mind about it. If you don't do this, you're going to go forward in life with a bunch of areas in life that are unresolved, and they're running after you. You should know this. They're going to run after you. They're going to repeat themselves over and over and over and over again. You know why? Because wisdom is always reaching out. You're always going to have those moments. Haven't you noticed these repeat issues in your life? Haven't you seen them by now? They keep popping up. And it makes you run faster and faster. They can wear you down and wear you out. I'm trying to help you so that you do not live that way, so that your mind is not fractured, so that you are complete. Turn and face everything with the armor. Look at everything. Learn from everything. Listen, there's nothing in your life that takes place that was not supposed to take place. And if God ultimately is holding you and guiding your life, then you better rethink life, period. You better know that your Father in heaven is allowing these events for his purpose. He is not a vain God, nor does he allow vanities to come out of his mouth. Nothing in your life is useless. Nothing. To even suggest that would be to say the Almighty is not the Almighty. Like he lost control somehow. Who would dare say that? That would be the highest form of disrespect. But understand that everything in your life had to take place. No, you don't know why. But stop, don't run. Look into it. Let your life be complete that way. Let's continue. It will mock. It says, I will also laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear cometh. Sure enough, when a time comes in the future and something happens, that's when you become desperate. You're unsure. You're frightened. You're full of anxieties. I thank you, Lord, I have zero anxieties. I'm supposed to have PTSD and all this other stuff. I don't have it. I have zero anxieties because I face everything. I didn't always face everything, but I do now. I face everything. I'll look into everything. And because I do that, guess what happens? I don't have fear. I don't struggle with fear. Fear can make you look away. Fear can make you run. Fear can cause you to be a runner in life. And all you're going to want is for this life to be over. You're going to hate life. You're going to hate everything in your life. But here's the problem with that. All these things in your life, God allowed to come forward in your life. He has designed your life in a way to grow you, that you will form your character, that you'll become who you are to become. If you start running, you reject everything God does. That's what you're really doing, rejecting it. And as I'll say it again, you don't know why initially it took place. There is an answer. Nothing needless is ever going to happen in anybody's life because God is just, He is good, full of mercy, He is gracious, He is kind, and His eyes are always upon us. He never did turn away. We just so foolishly, we get so frightened. Oh, the devil did it, and I got to run. No, you don't. You face him too and pluck him back to where he started from. You do that by standing in righteous counsel. That's the beginning of what we read. By facing it, you'll perceive the words of understanding. Let's continue. Ultimately, it says, because I have called you, refused, and I have stretched out my hand, and no man regarded. But ye have said it not all my counsel, and would none of my reproof. I will also laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear cometh. That's when you get in these moments and you're frightened, and all of a sudden it seems like the world is against you. Anybody ever feel like that? Like the world is laughing at you, is against you? Like your enemies are going to have the upper hand in knowing that you fell prey to something. That's exactly how people feel. It enters into you. Why? Because now you're operating within the negative side of a principle that surely is just like gravity. You don't have to accept it. It's going to take place anyway. Would it be wise to learn about it? Oh, yes. When your fear cometh as desolation, when your fear cometh as a desolation, that doesn't mean it is going to be a desolation. It says when your fear cometh as desolation. When your fear comes and it looks terrible, and you're full of anxieties and everything else, and your destruction cometh as a whirlwind, when distress and anguish cometh upon you, then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. That's when all of us are willing to, I'll listen now. That's when we pay attention. We start going over things in our lives. We start remembering things. How did I messed this up? See, that's because we didn't face it the first time. We get down the road and it's a real mess. And then you ask yourself, how did I drop so low? I just really messed everything up. But then at that moment, you're trying to go over everything. You're trying to trace things and it's not working. We should all know these so well. It says, they'll call upon me, but I will not answer. They shall seek me early. They'll not find me. When you're in trouble like that, that's when you start opening your word again. Lord, I'll listen to you. You start reading, you start praying, and the feeling won't go away. You're looking for some type peace, but it's so far out of reach. You all know what that is. Why go through another one of those moments when you don't have to? If you had the instruction to never go through those moments again, would you receive the instruction? Because I'm telling you now, we're reading about the instruction, but will you receive it? By the way, this is not my method. Let's continue. They shall call upon me, but I will not answer. They shall seek me early, but they shall not find me, for that they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord. They did not consider that the Lord He has formed their lives, but have discounted portions of their lives. At some tragic moment, they have to forget, no, you're being forged, ladies and gentlemen. You're being molded and shaped, and life, when I tell you, when the potter is scraping things off of you, that's life. When pieces are being added to you, that's life. Everything in your life is part of your shaping. How in the world could we discount it? When we go in the fires because of impurities, if you come out of that hot fire, the potter will put his ear to you. If yours pops and crackles, that's a sign of impurities. Noise, you're going right back in the fire. That's what we do. We go into a situation, we come out, what do? We yell and we scream, we're griping and complaining. You know what that means? You're not ready. You've got to go back in there to burn off the rest of the impurities. You don't control the oven, the kennel. You don't control anything. You are the piece of the pottery. You're under a process. So if we can understand that process, we will not fight against it, because that is futile. If I shaped a cup and I said, yes, when I put this in that fire, all the impurities are taken out, that's the shape I want. But if I put it in there and somehow the clay does not want to hold its shape, but it changes while it's in the fire. And if it keeps doing that, after so many corrective measures, it's going to come out warped. And when it comes out warped, I don't want it. I'm going to go toss it away. I'm going to get rid of it and go get some more clay and start brand new. But that one will be discarded. I tell you, our lives are the exact same way. If you ever want to learn about your life, look up pottery and the process of pottery. You'll see it. See, the Lord refers to that for a reason. In fact, everything he refers to is something that we can reference. Take your computer and start utilizing it for the good, for the righteous things, and grow bountifully. You will not remain the frightened person or the anxious person you are right now. You will not. You will change. That's a promise upon your life. You will change. When your fear cometh as desolation, and your destruction cometh as a whirlwind, when the distress and the anguish cometh upon you, then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. They will seek me early, but they shall not find me. For they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord. They would none of my counsel. They despised all my reproof. Therefore shall they eat of the fruit of their own way and be filled with their own devices. Do you see this? Proverbs 1:31. You should highlight that, because when you reject what the Lord is doing, you're going to eat of your own garden, and it's not going to be a good one. You will eat of the fruit of your own way. Now, two things in this. Number one, you don't want to eat the fruit of your own way, because your own way comes directly from the flesh, and there's no good thing that the flesh can produce. None. That's what the word says. That means what you're going to eat, what you're going to live by, is going to be bitter. You guys understand? It's going to be bitter. And you're going to be filled with your own devices, with your own plans. You're going to be left on your own trying to think up everything just to survive, like you did in the days of sin. That should let you know two things. Number one, we're not to eat of the fruit of our own way, but to eat of the good fruit that's in the way of the Lord. Right? We're not to be filled with our own plots and plans. No. The Bible says you submit your plan unto the Lord and your thoughts will be established. All of it comes from him. He'll give you a righteous thing to do. But if you keep rejecting him, that's precisely where you're going to be. Just like that pottery that came out warped. You're going to sit there, you're going to cool off, and you're going to be trashed. For the turning away of the simple shall slay them. That's when you and your craftiness, with all of your intellect and everything else, are living your life, and then all of a sudden you fail. And the ones who live the simple life, the ones who are, still on public assistance, are smiling, but you've just gone bankrupt. You've just got everything about your life reclaimed, rejected, and everything. You've lost everything. But the ones who end a simple life, they continue on with joy. And you sit there and you don't understand. I'm telling you something real. Because you will not understand how the people you said don't know anything, why they're so full of joy and continue on. And yet with all your intellect, wisdom, and knowledge, you just failed. I'll tell you why. Because it's your wisdom, knowledge, and intellect. Because your life was full of your plans and your plots. And when you start eating of your garden, this is what's going to happen to the world. They will wonder where they went wrong. They are convinced you eat of the fruit of righteousness, which is not bitter. See, when you eat of the fruit of righteousness, which is not bitter, you have a smile on your face. Your heart is upright. You are fulfilled and not empty. You're not scratching your head, but you're complete. You're resting in the Lord. See that difference? But when you're left to your own devices, you will scratch your head. You'll end up violent. You'll say someone cheated. You're going to blame. Why? Because you still don't have that righteous fruit yet. You're not eating of righteous fruit. You're eating a bitter fruit. You ever seen a baby eat a lemon? They make a face you'd never forget. You know when a baby is eating a lemon, their face shrivels up. My face shrivels up if I were to eat a lemon right now. We have a choice. Now listen to this. Let me finish reading this. I'm going to explain something. When evil is involved in things, and believe me, there are some evil elements in the world. Evil is going to have its way when God's people start falling for the devices of flesh. What stops a righteous outcome is this principle. There are evil elements out there that are meant to deceive. And if you start following their way, you're going to be left to your own devices. You're going to eat the fruit of your own way, which is bitter. You will not have the joy of the Lord when it's all said and done. But you'll end up having to act out of flesh. You're going to blame, you're going to point, you're going to be violent. I'm just telling you what the facts are. See, in no case, when it comes to evil, is that battle left to us, but that battle is the Lord's. Hallelujah. You see that? Evil is conquered by way of the Lord. Can anybody conquer the Lord? But based upon so many events in the world, you can see a lot of people ultimately don't believe that. What they're really fighting is a fall in the realm of pride. They're defending their own positions and everything else. Why? Because righteousness was not involved. It could change overnight. All of everything could change overnight. And what's really happening is this same bitterness has crept into the church. And elements of the church are turning bitter just like the world, just like the word said it would. Those of you who live in America, it is not Democrat, it is not a Republican thing. It is a righteous or unrighteous thing. It is the world or it is the Lord's way. If you choose Republican or Democrat, you're choosing the world. If you choose righteousness, you do become part of the solution. And you sit as a child of the living God, having defeated the evils and the devil himself. Sitting atop him, you'll tread him under your feet. And by way of wisdom and understanding, the Lord will fill your heart and your mind and your mouth with words that no one will be able to gainsay against. And you will affect everybody around you in a way that you're not able to do on your own. You want to make a true difference. Learn how not to reject wisdom. Proverbs 132, for the turning away of the simple shall slay them, and the prosperity of fools shall destroy them. Listen, but whoso hearkeneth unto me shall dwell safely and shall be quiet from fear of evil. Did you hear that? They shall be quiet from fear of evil. To be quiet means you'll be at peace from any fear of any evil thing. You will not be paranoid like people are today. I'm telling you now that most of the paranoid people today are in the church. They're not outside the church, they're in the church. The paranoid message is coming from inside the church. Why? Because there's an absence of peace when it comes to the fear of evil. They have no peace concerning the direction of their own lives. The anchor seems to be cut or something has gone wrong. Can you guys imagine me afraid? Can you imagine one of the prophets being afraid of what man can do? They taught us a lesson. Man will do many things, but the Lord controls the outcome when it comes to his children. Do you hear that? God controls the outcome when it comes to his children. If somebody injected me with cyanide, I tell you it would not work. I've been poisoned before a few times. It didn't work. I didn't so much as have a tear. No vomiting. No any of that. Why? Because I choose the Lord. What happens is, in many cases, people go out into the world, they do it their way, and then they fall back on the Lord. Then they get poisoned or something. Say, well, that didn't work because I got poisoned. That's because you did it your way. You cannot do it your way. Provoke everything out there and then sit there with a pious tongue and say nothing can hurt me because I believe in Christ. You cannot do it that way. You have to submit yourself first. Seek the ways of righteousness, which can be done in a split second. Choose him in everything you do, and I tell you, he shall be your shield. And nothing man does to you will take effect upon you. You'll shake everything off. Lord knows I've shaken everything off. Every bad report. Do you guys know what do they call it? Glioblastoma multiforme is? I used that word the other day because it was a type of bone cancer they said I had. 4 times they said I had this cancer. It is the most painful type of cancer you can have. You didn't know that, did you? You don't have long left. That's what they say. You know, before that, there have been other reports. Maybe the reports were right. But my life is not left up to what they find. My life is not even left up to what goes wrong with my body. My life is in the hands of the Most High. Why, though? Because I'm choosing him. I'm not doing things my own way. I don't do things my way and then fall back on the Lord. I don't do that. I do not make a call based upon what I think. Let me give you guys something simple so you understand me. Suppose somebody I knew was in a dreadful car accident. You guys have never once heard me rush to everybody and say, oh, please pray, quick. You've never heard that. You've never heard that, have you? I'll never do that. Do you know why I'll never do that? Because whether anybody prays or not, that person is still in God's hands. Do you understand? You remember when Jesus tarried after Lazarus died? You remember that? Well, your friend is dead. Jesus said, okay. All right, well, we're going a couple days. What? In a couple days? You'll be stinking by then in the grave. What are you doing? It's an emergency. He just died. Jesus said, okay, well, we're going one day. Why didn't he get excited? Because he told us something. He told us something about death. He told us something about the grave. He told us something about ourselves. Your life is not left up to chance. It's not some Roman theology here where your life is left up to the fates. Your life is in the hands of the Almighty, and it always has been. And by the Spirit, I'm trying to tell you that Proverbs chapter 1 is the beginning of your release from all this insanity that so many endure in the world. It's the Lord's word is the key. Not the way we think the word should work, but the Lord's word is already a standard. It's already the action in our lives. And it does govern everything. Part of our task is to understand the process. Because once we know something, then we're given the opportunity to choose something. That's why I don't read the word passively. I know when I read the word, I never read just to know stuff. I read to learn of my Father. And when I read something like this, I do pause and I do stop and I do contemplate because I have a choice to make. See, right here is a question to all of us. Are you going to continue to live your life the way you were living it? Or will you follow the leading of the Lord and begin the change? Whose report are you going to believe, and what kingdom are you going to serve? What side are you on? See, this is a question. You just can't read this and go off to 15 other chapters, go off something else. Forget about this. I don't do that. This is a question. And when the Lord makes something known to me, I have to chew on it and make that choice that day. I have to know it so I can live by it. Then after I know it, I begin to walk by it. And when you start walking by the word, for example, how do you walk by this word? Well, the Lord in here is given to us what? What is given to us? Wisdom crieth out everywhere. So even with that, start being observant. And you watch how many opportunities people have to learn. Instead of forgetting or becoming anxious about your situation and trying to run away, face it. Say, wait a minute, let me do some self-evaluation. Stop pointing outside, saying that's the problem. Start saying, wait, my Lord is speaking to me. Through this circumstance or situation, no matter what it was, no matter how distasteful, whatever it is, the Lord is speaking to me. And let me hear, let me learn, let me listen, and let me face it. No more running. No more running. See, when you read this, when you know that wisdom is crying out everywhere, crying out in the concourse, in the streets, inside and outside, opening of the gates, uttering her words in the city, because in a city, many things happen. So through those happenings, that's wisdom speaking. But who's listening? When life reproofs you, when you are reproofed, when you're shunned, pushed away, something doesn't go right, who's going to turn away from the reproof of wisdom? When something is happening, that's just the way it is. Turn and face it. Don't just fall, get up and keep going, but look back, and you have to inspect that fall. When we used to walk patrols at night, I fell a couple times. After the second time, I said, I can't do this. What in the world? Why come I can't see these obstacles? Come to find out, I didn't have the NVGs adjusted the right way where I could see this bottom spectrum here. So when I faced it, that's when I made the correction. I didn't fall again. I turned a Humvee over one time because you get with NVGs, a hill and a hole look just alike. But I had to learn the difference between the two. Driving at night with NVGs on. You see a blank spot in the desert, you might want to know what you're doing. But it takes facing those things. That's how you gain wisdom. And you don't repeat the same things over and over again. No more running. Face it. And be free. Because see, all those who hearken unto wisdom are going to dwell safely. And they'll be quiet from fear of evil. That means you'll have peace from all the evil that should be against you. You'll have a peace about you. You're not going to be like the other folks. Why? Because when you have understanding and interpretation of many things of wisdom and knowledge, you have a knowing. And that knowing is peace. Isn't it? Just like we know that Jesus is our Lord, so that if we see him, that becomes our peace. But if somebody doesn't know that, they're going to be mortified. What is that coming? We know about the end events, the events that take place in this world, the earthquakes, the floods in diverse places, the stars falling like figs shaken from a tree in a mighty wind. We know about this, so when it happens, we'll say, that's prophecy. We have a peace about that. But if somebody does not know, they're going to go into a panic. They're going to say, what do? I don't know what to do. They're going to start searching through everything for a reference. They're not going to be ready. No matter what they do, they're not going to be ready.